Women in video gaming industry are increasingly harassed and abused. It's tempting to blame a minority of disturbed individuals, but many are also pointing a guilty finger at a gaming subculture that devalues women. And the industry is becoming more diverse, with women now comprising nearly half of all video gamers. That makes some people feel threatened and very upset. Brianna Wu is a video game developer and the head of Giant Spacekat, which is an indie development studio in Boston, Massachusetts, and I spoke with her earlier. Brianna, welcome to Arise America. Thanks so much for being here with us. We appreciate it. First of all, just lay a foundation for us. Give us your assessment of the video game culture as it relates to the portrayal, gender portrayals and treatment.
Sure. It's actually a very simple problem. You know, when I was growing up, women were barely gamers. Today, there was a recent study that came out that showed women are now 48% of gamers. So as women have exploded as a market, you see a stronger and stronger disconnect between the overwhelmingly male culture that develops video games and the people that play it. So you're seeing just basically the fact that there's so many women gamers nowadays, kind of the status quo just isn't cutting it for us anymore.
In this case, when you say status quo, what do you mean? And I think specifically you're sort of talking about misogynistic things.
I think that's a very good way to put it. You know, I think the average person that's maybe outside of the video game industry can look at the field and tell that, you know, women aren't really portrayed the best. You know, we're often the girlfriend, the bimbo, somebody kidnapped, a damsel in distress. I think to most people looking at this, they can tell that women aren't always represented the best way in video games. And this has huge consequences for the culture. If you're a woman and you're playing a game, I cannot tell you how many times the game sends this message like, you are a dude, or it assumes that you're a guy playing it. And it's very unwelcoming.
And besides assuming that the audience is all male, what about the portrayal of the women, both in how they look and how they're treated?
Sure. It's I don't think there's a nice way to say it. It's horrendous. You know, very often we're large-breasted bimbos. We very rarely have agency in our actions. A particularly disturbing trend in games that's happened in the last few years is what we call the woman in the refrigerator syndrome. And that happens when the game starts and a woman is immediately violently murdered to kind of give the man an excuse to go off on an adventure. Shadows of Mordor did this. Watch Dogs did this. It's a really disturbing trope, like when women are murdered to give men a sense of, you know, agency to go on an adventure.
Yeah, it really is shocking indeed. Let's talk about what you consider to be some of the worst offenders. You gave our producer 5 of them: Grand Theft Auto 5, God of War 2, Dead or Alive 5, Metroid, Other M, I don't know what that means, and Lollipop Chainsaw. Why are these your 5 worst offenders?
Well, I think, you know, Grand Theft Auto is a very troubling narrative. This was criticized by many women in the field, some of which aren't even feminists. It's an adventure for men, by men, and women are just nagging stereotypes for the entire game. It's hard to think of even one woman that's portrayed positively in those games. For the rest of these games, for 3 of them, women are just portrayed with over-the-top sexuality. Dead or Alive 5 is particularly disturbing. This is a game that's entirely based around breast physics, and it's a well-made game. But you know, when they have like the Nintendo 3DS and the main feature of their engineering is having the breasts pop out of the screen at you, that's not really a great message for women. Other M, Metroid Other M is a really interesting example. Samus Aran, who stars in that game, is widely considered to be one of the most empowered, awesome women in video game history. But here you have this development team that got a hold of her and turned her into a very disempowered stereotype with father issues, and it takes this great character and turns her into someone very weak.
Brianna, let me jump in there because I want to get to a couple of things before we have to let you go. And first of all, what do you want to see done about this? I mean, I think we sort of get into issues of censorship, that many of these video games are for adults, and adults should be able to choose what they use their recreation time for. So how do you want to address this issue?
It's very straightforward. This is the most capitalist solution in the entire world. And it's simply have the game industry hire more women. I have a friend of mine that worked for a AAA game company, and she was sitting there working on the story team. And the men that were working around her kept pitching tropes that were very sexist. And she talked to them, and she's like, don't you realize this is problematic? And they didn't realize it was problematic. So if you have women on these teams adding their voices, then what I think will naturally happen is you'll see women in games be portrayed as more authentic people and not just sex symbols and sex objects.
Are there women that want to get into the gaming industry and that don't have the access?
Yeah. Oh my God. This culture is so hard, and it's we could talk for an hour about the very problematic culture in the game industry towards women. But it's horrible. Like if you have children, it's very hard to have a supporting environment. It's very macho. It's a very difficult place to work, to be honest.
Yeah, this is a very important issue. It's fascinating, something that really wasn't on my radar. So I thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. We're going to stop right there. Brianna Wu, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.